We spoke of mortals and of the world itself in very broad strokes of information. We are now to discuss a more closer dive in that which is unspeakable. The first to commit treason in his rebellion against the Granite King. Discussions on topics of any relation to the Lord of Apathy is strictly forbidden. Many cultures consider it a taboo, or have no memory of these tales. The truth that all Servians to the throne of Apathy know is that the history of Vendrick and the Kingdom of Darkness is written in the subtexts and omissions of major tales. Classic nursery rhymes, folklore, stories, and even religious scriptures host the tales of the void within them. Being like a dog whistle, one would never see these truths without first receiving the graces of apathy and understanding its important lessons. The Granite King could foresee the future ahead, and shuddered to know that he would be betrayed by one of his loyal. As a measure to protect the world so hard and fought for, in the year 900 by Flame's calendar, he would elevate his most loyal generals into lords to serve underneath him in his own stead. The hope was to remove any fear his allies had of him. In 232 Era of Fire, or 2533 by Flame's calendar, Iden would finish the construction of the thrones. Each would be gifted to his subordinate lords, which granted them great abilities to rule over their realm, should they be worthy of it. When all united in collective thought, the thrones were also a weapon, a means to slay the Granite King if all were to be used in such an intent in a consensus. Iden made the thrones this way and hoped to remove any worried suspicion from his most closest allies. All of these measures were just desperate means for Iden to push back against fate in the march of time, and hope that the future could be changed and his world would persist for eternity. The paranoia and fear that he would know in time would be proven justified, as in time his Kingurdian empire would be torn asunder. Vendrick was made the Lord of the Void. He was put in the charge to steward over the darkness and to halt it from advancing into reality. He took to this role well and championed it as a critical position for the persistence of all existence. Over time, being alone with his thoughts and the ever-changing dark before him, Vendrick would conclude many things. He would comprehend that the void was not truly dark, but was only seen as dark from a light-bounded perspective. He would theorize that he could expand his domain, and in turn, Iden's, by creating his own life out there in the dark, seizing a portion of Iden's flame, and combining it with his void-tainted one. He created a flame of his own, a warm flame that burned blue and was a beacon in the dark. With his new flame, he would create, like Iden did, and forge his own people to rule over. He would erect his own metropolis that sailed on Corellium light through the gray of the abyss. Vendrick had given his own life to the creation of his own people and realm, and so he remained bound to his throne as the first of the dead. He remained in rule of his realm, as Iden had heard the treachery of all of his nobles. He remained in that throne when the Granite King brought war to all those who betrayed him, and he remained ever vigilant and loyal when Iden came for him. In 2199 Era of Fire, or 4499 of Flame's calendar, The armies of mortality marched into the void to confront the Lord of Apathy. They say that the armies of mortality were in absolute shock at the sight of seeing a blue flame, a dark sun, orbiting Vendrick's city, bestowing light into the void. The mortals had witnessed fiends coming out of their homes to greet and rejoice before the King of Fire. Many scholars attribute this as fiends fearing Vendrick as a tyrant, while those of the void truly do see the respect for life that these ancient beings once held. What happened next is in myth or up for debates. When Iden stood before Vendrick, the Lord of Apathy, all that is truly known is that Vendrick perished and Iden walked out in silence. Some scholars believe that Iden executed Vendrick. Others say Vendrick resisted until the very end. The denizens of the void, on the other hand, speak a different tale. They say that Iden had consulted with the withering Vendrick, speaking of why he had not come to his aid when the call was given, and why had he forsaken and corrupted life itself. They say that Vendrick would respond. After this, Vendrick would perish, and give the last ounces of his power to calm the void for Iden. Of which, after leaving the throne room, Iden turned and pointed to it, and proclaimed aloud for all to hear, that only one worthy of Vendrick, only one who could change the world, could be permitted to seat upon that throne. These tales are those that are kept hidden from the public on the grounds of heresy and punishment by forced correction, usually by torture, then followed by public executions. For good reason, as it paints a clearer picture for those ancient times. It humanizes these characters and speaks of mercy to second chances, an ideal that, from the message of the story, labels it as a road to greater suffering. An ideal that has been proven more and more right. Mortals are weak to the influences of the void, for it resides deep within us all. It resonates as an echo off of our very thoughts and insecurities. It haunts us like a shadow over our hopes and dreams and very soul. It binds around our physical being and strains us to our limits. An empty feeling of being hollow through every medium of our being is a keen sign of this. As long as life remains, the void is ever present in this world, and if not properly balanced, can indeed lead to one's demise. The idea of apathy is greater than a simple concept. It is an actual darkness that afflicts people in leaving behind concerns and what they hold dear. It comes from the teachings that Vendrick and his descendants passed on to the living. To one consumed in apathy, they see their position as meaningless in the greater image of the world. They see themselves as powerless to change anything. Many of them accompany this method of thinking with self-sacrifice and martyrdom, because in some aspects of their being, they do have hope remaining, in contrast to their overwhelming apathy. In a way, apathy is the weakening of the soul, a flickering of the flame. It engulfs mortals and snuffs ambitions, making them subservient to only the march of time. Stress is a psychological manifestation of the void in a mortal which puts greater strain onto the cognition of the person afflicted. It is caused of the loss of hope and the waning of determination. When engulfed in stress, it will manifest in troves of insanity, and if pushed beyond what the body can maintain, will cause a violent heart attack, which leaves the heart as gray as ash. It is possible that in stronger bodies of mortals, that going beyond such a heart attack can cause the mind of the suffering person to become fractured and tear open or rip into the void itself. Harbingers, being of chosen by flame, can balance the walk across the dark, and willingly suffer stress to harden their resolve, granting them bouts of unnatural cognition, speed, and strength at the escalator risk of falling due to said stress. Withering is the material manifestation of the void in the physical realm, either onto a person or as an object. The void is ceaseless, and always will try to devour reality as part of its nature. In a dance with fire, the void rips at reality while ever being pushed back by the flames of light. The rip that tears away at reality is what we call wither. It can be afflicted onto the world through voidic miracles or certain dangerous rituals, or even by certain materials such as onyx, or even delivered by certain types of fiends. Once it has been afflicted, it is nearly impossible to push back against, and even harder to survive its merciless nature, erasing one from present existence. For when the void thrashes at reality, it indeed erases it, and in the case of wither, one's physical form will be erased from all reality. With how brutal the void seems, most would be turned back from even humoring it. However, there are those in the world who look upon this and believe that nature as obvious and foolish to think otherwise. The key concept which I have been lately building to, which all who serve the void believe in earnest, is that to them, life is a curse, and death is the true state of all beings. They, like Vendrick, look into the void and see its absolute nothingness as the true state of all beings, that reality is a strange curse, an anomaly within the natural order of how the universe is supposed to be. In a way, mortals who serve the void themselves are reaching for a greater world, much like those who reach for the flame do. The difference between these two is that the servants of the void, they know something is out there responding to them. Be it a wounded death, still skewered by the tower, beginning of the era of famine, or be it the void itself is unsure. All that can be confirmed is something is providing power to these servants of darkness. Voidmancers are some of the most powerful servants to the Lord of Apathy. They receive talismans or signets of death or the void, and are compelled by the promise of a grander tomorrow to follow this dark path as a herald who speaks the miracles of Vendrick and his successors. They weaponize the many ways the void appears in the material world to gain power from the space around them. Some will use the void to bring forth fiends. Others may manipulate it to raise more famine. Some may try to afflict those around them in forging a death cult, or perhaps utilize it to ascend through the rankings of the public in secret. Regardless of the method, they all do so against the status quo, and to bring with them lots of destruction and suffering to friends and foes alike. Dark Wraiths are chosen warriors who return from death with only a faint memory of who they once were. They are tasked by the dark to hunt the souls of powerful people so that they can be returned to the throne of apathy. Some believe that this is because they wish to fulfill Aiden's pledge that the only person to sit upon the throne would be equal to Vendrick, and that they are desperately searching for a soul capable. Those who believe that Death, the Lord of Apathy, is still alive and only wounded, will say that souls are taken to the throne to heal the primordial from their injured state. Others will say they simply devour the soul themselves so they can take the throne. Others say it is offered to the void. The only truth that we mortals know is that we know of no reason. Dark Wraiths being chosen are incredibly powerful and capable warriors. They are ruthless, tireless, and merciless. Some could say that they are unstoppable. Even if Dark Wraiths are slain, they can always be brought back if their patron should wish it. Death cultists are people who are brought from any walk of life into the teachings of Vendrick and the Void. They follow higher powers in bringing the end goal of their cults. As mortals become more engulfed and surrounded by the dark, the more it will take grip onto their lives and change their perception of things. We mortals will always speak of how can an empty vacuum have so much control and power, when it is in fact nothing. To the initiated, they will revere it as a god above all others, as it is the only one that does speak and directly intervene in reality for them. When the Void responds, some see it speak, using the world around the viewer to convey its bidding. To the more initiated, the Void will whisper thoughts into their minds. Those holding insanities have claimed to hear the Void itself speaking to them, while hauntingly, there are those that believe the Void itself sings to them. An endless haunting choir that emits an uncontrollable amount of darkness from the listener, which blankets all around that source and madness and withering. If fully manifested, this singing of the abyss could force an orchestra of rips into reality, threatening all of existence. The Void in its influence would seem like a force of nature flaring about radically to snuff all light from the universe. But this is only half true. Yes, the Void is a force of nature on a universal scale, but it is also guided. Its mortal branch of power is in the one who tends to it, that is, the Lord of Apathy, are of a great and powerful force. A familial secret society, that of which we are all a part of. This tree owes its heritage directly to Vendrick himself, and indirectly to the Granite King Aiden. It is called the Pride of Darkness, and it was first established by Vendrick's heir and son, Edertoth, the Dark Lord. During his dark reign on the continent of Credo, he amassed notable families and lineage to his father's call. He kidnapped the gods and nomadic horsemen and took away their afterlife. Rallied together the noble family of Angzaroth, who turned their back on Flame during Aiden's purge of nobles. He would rally the eldritch legions of the Prince of Nightmares, a chosen champion of the nightmarish elder gods known as Harad, the Lord of Silence. His own sons, Neglin, Lord of the Eclipse, Turio Abon, the Lord of Hollow, and Yalanis of Vendrick's Baptism, would forge the first cults and orders that began the fall of mortals to their cause. Perhaps most villainous of all, Edertoth would forge his own court of nobles, referred to as the Court of Black Fire, which was made up of defective princes of fire, Aiden's own children, who turned their back on Flame and embraced the darkness. Together, the most elite members of these groups would be given the title of Prince of Apathy, with those beneath becoming the Court of Apathy. The now established hierarchy gave the Pride of Darkness greater cohesion in guiding its apocalyptic goals onto the world. Edertoth's Dark Crusade would see countless tribes of men pulled into its ever-expanding clutch. The momentum would continue to devour the entire continent if it wasn't, however, for the alliance between the Light Elves of Roataloth, the Imperial Marin, and the Proto-Halosians, who of which, after the Battle of the Dust Plains in 1142 Era of Myth, or 5742 by Flame's calendar, would strike back against the Pride of Darkness. And in the year 1221 Era of Myth, or 5821 by Flame's calendar, the Dark Crusaders would be cast across the ocean and be banished from the continent of Pridion onto the islands of the Eastern Sea, which would be dubbed as Dark Lord's Marathon. In conclusion, the void is very much as natural as existence itself. Light and dark, hope and despair, they are all just pieces of this greater world. While most would question its nature, the truth has always remained apparent, that if the world of the living is to ever be undone, it will be because we let the void claim us. It would be by our own apathy that the flame will be snuffed out, and all will cease to be. To see this as a tragedy or a mercy is one entirely up for you to make.